welcome, and I'd like to just kind of cover what the agenda is going to be for our call so we can get done what we need to. We are going to cover briefly what the purpose is of the assessment, just summarize kind of quickly what the development of the assessment has been so far. We're going to talk about the assessment components and then look at the comparability of definitions and the examples between the original model and the new assessments. And then we'll talk briefly about what the next steps are. So let's move to the next screen. The purpose of the assessments for the Resiliency Competency Initiative is to evaluate the change in resiliency competence for learners. There's 5 competencies. For learners who complete courses, those courses that are designed to develop one or more of those resiliency competencies. So we have pilot courses that have submitted information to us showing where the content, activities, and assessment within the course are related to at least one up to all 5 of the competencies. And so our assessments are supposed to be able to evaluate the change in the acquisition, really, of competence for those learners. So let's move to the next screen. So the assessments come in both a pre-course and a post-course assessment, and due to some of the timing and requirements of the institutional review boards at each of the institutions, for the fall semester we are only going to be using the post-course assessment, but we're going to be talking about both of them today because the content is largely the same in both the pre-course and post-course assessments. And how they were developed started with the development of the resiliency competency model that began last year with meetings of representatives from the community colleges within the consortium. There was a series of webinars to stakeholders that represented staff at the community colleges, faculty, students, as well as employers and industry groups. There was a conference, the DREAM conference, where there was another meeting to refine the model, and then there was additional editing done by the Northeast Resiliency Consortium leadership. All of that was then put into a survey to stakeholders representing, again, the staff, the faculty, the students from the community colleges, as well as some employers and industry groups. And that is how we developed the model itself. And from the testing of that model, those survey results, we started creating a draft assessment. And the draft assessment contains the projected wording we think we're asking for IRB to approve regarding the disclosures that are required. It includes some effort to keep the readability level down. The target was 6th grade level, so that would be accessible to the students who would be taking this variety of pilot courses. And we also had as one of the requirements that the assessment would have validity in terms of its wording being very similar to the wording in the model. In order to bring the readability level down to 6th grade, we did have to make alterations to the actual language used. And so the target for today's input on this call is going to be whether we have been successful in doing that. There were additional reviews done by the leadership team as well as some of the instructors for the pilot programs, going through the language that's been used, making our best efforts to try and make the final assessment draft look what it needs to be, say what it needs to say. And so we are now at the point where we need to look and see whether there is a comparability between what we had in the model versus what we have now in the assessment, just to make sure that we're not veering off course. So let's move to the next slide.
Eric, I'm going to pause just for a minute Brian is not able to see the presentation, and I want to make sure that others are able to see the presentation on their screen.
Okay.
If you can see the PowerPoint presentation, raise your hand, please. Let's see. Got it. Okay, so we have folks who are able to see it, and Brian just connected via phone for audio. So I'm going to work with Brian to see if we can get him connected, or if I can at least send him the slides. Okay, thanks, folks.
Looks also like Ed has a question.
Ed says he is muted by the organizer. I can unmute folks. All right, Ed, you are unmuted. All right, great. Thanks.
Okay, so let's move to the next slide.
Okay. There we go.
And for those of you who may not be familiar with what the components are for the assessment, just as a review, there is a pre-course evaluation, and that is only going to be used in the spring semester, since we are still in development and won't be able to do it at the start of the fall courses. Those have already begun. There is a post-course evaluation, which is quite similar to the pre-course evaluation. It will be used both in the fall and the spring. We have also asked for additional evidence of learner competency attainment that will be collected both in the fall and the spring, and those are the things that have been indicated in the course alignments by the instructors as their way of assessing, their way of evaluating attainment within the course. And we're also going to be developing, have not yet completed it, an additional feedback tool really for the instructors to give to us, the ideas that will be used both in fall and spring, to get some more feedback about the instructor's perspective on how things went, and whether or not even the assessment was understandable in their opinion. If there were troubles that the learners had, the students had in their courses with the assessment. So those are the components that we are going to be including in this evaluation. So we are at the point now where we want to look at, make a comparison between what we developed in the model for the competencies and then how those have been reworded in the assessment to make sure that there's comparable meaning. So on the screen it says that we, again, developed the assessment to be at the 6th grade reading level. Prior to that, the model is, best estimate is somewhere between 10th and 11th grade reading level. And so we wanted to intentionally bring that down, which means, as a result, that there's going to be some loss of precision in the wording. That's just going to be expected because we're using more general, easily accessible words. We did intentionally reduce the examples to only 3 per competency. Some of the competencies had more than 3 originally in the model, still retained in the model, but for this purpose, to remove some of the complexity, to make it easier to process and complete the assessment, we imposed a restriction to only 3 examples. So you are going to see on the screen the model version right next to the assessment version for each competency. So you're going to see 5 sets. And the question that you will need to ask yourself upon reading it is the meaning for both competency versions comparable? In other words, are they essentially saying the same thing? Is it acceptable to you, the similarity in the wording? And if so, you'll vote yes in the poll, and if no, you'll vote no. So again, the question is related to, is the meaning for both competency versions comparable between the model version and the assessment version? So I guess I should stop here and see whether or not anyone has a question before I move to the first screen. And if so, go ahead and raise your hand, and Meredith, you'll have to let me know who that is and make sure their mic is on so I can hear them.
Okay, let's see. Anna has a question. One moment, please. Anna, I'm unmuting your line.
Hi, can you go back one screen?
Yes.
To the assessment components?
Yeah. So originally, I know that was, we were going to do a pre-course and a post-course this semester as a pilot, and then I was told because IRB was late, there would not be a pre-course assessment.
Correct. Right.
However, because we have credit faculty that have, you know, obviously weren't able to put this together during the summer and are here now, Saeed, who's on the line, is, you know, thinking of trying to be able to map these competencies for this semester. But since, you know, we'll be doing that a little later, if the IRB is signed, there may be an opportunity to do a pre-course and post-course on his, since he won't have taught anything, you know, in the beginning of this time period. Would that be helpful, and should we do that, or did you want to stay consistent?
Paul, do you want to answer that? Because you and I had an exchange earlier this morning about it. I don't know if you wanted to speak to that.
So the question really, the question really is about timing. Paul, are you able to speak right now?
I don't know if he has a mic or not.
He does.
Okay.
Okay. We could come back to that question.
Okay. Well, I think that there's some, based upon my conversation with him this morning, there's some openness to how best to do that. I'd suggest, if Paul's not already aware of that, that you be in conversation with him. He's got a couple of things that he was thinking of this morning that are going to be related to that. So I'd suggest talking with Paul.
Yeah, we do have, this is Ed, by the way, we do have stuff that is classes that are starting in October. So there is already a precedent for fall stuff that's going through in the fall. But as far as I knew, we were just going to have just, you know, the post all the way through for fall, because there's other things that have already started. So from my understanding, it was just going to be a consistency thing. But yeah, we can. I mean, as far as I know, we were, you know, keeping the door propped open for anybody to, if you know, because I know Brian probably knows this. There's a couple people from Bunker. I know Liz has wanted to do another class, and Brian had another class as well. So we're as final, you know, as much as we've already collected everything, we're still letting people kind of submit stuff for approval. And so yeah, again, I'll let Paul kind of finalize that. But as far as I know, Saeed, if you have a pretty good idea based on kind of what you've already seen in terms of mapping courses, yeah, you can go. I mean, I'd like to see what it looks like anyway, because you know, we clearly would want to do it in the spring if we don't get it all the way in the fall.
And so this is Eric. I think one of just the key things to recognize as somewhat of a barrier to us that we're having to contend with is the IRB process, and it's different at each of the institutions, and some of them have rather long periods between their meeting dates, and so to some extent we'll be a little bit subject to when the IRB approval has been granted, or if they're saying their adjustments need to be made and we have to go back and make some adjustments. And those IRB submissions can't be well, we can't provide the IRB submissions until we have the assessment finalized. So that's one of the main reasons for this call, is so that we're able to get that into the stage of this process where we can then package together the IRB submissions to each institution. Each institution will have a different submission because they will only have the information related to the courses that are at their institution. So it's not like
Eric?
do one and just send it out. Yeah.
Okay, you can hear
Paul's
me now?
back here. Paul's
No,
again.
I've been here the whole time. I heard the whole conversation, but for some reason you guys couldn't hear me.
No, well, we can now.
You may try to make me quiet, but I will refuse. To answer the question, I think we are still accepting a few other courses from Bunker Hill over the remainder of this week, but we're not going to go any farther than that in having anything included in the pilot for the fall. And we're not going to, and I don't anticipate us changing a pre-course evaluation for the fall either. So regardless of whether we get some last-minute programs in for the pilot in the fall, it will only have the post-course evaluation. And then we will, if we get more interest in additional programs to be part of the spring semester, then we can add those, but those will need to go back through the IRB process, as Eric just explained. Did that answer the question? I think I kind of tackled it, but just to provide any more clarity.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't know if you would want more data, and an opportunity to do the post-test, the pre-test, but that's fine.
Can Saeed get it to me this week? Is that possible? I mean, I don't know if Saeed has his mic on, but.
Well, we were going to be meeting about it, and we haven't really had a moment to get together, so I don't know that he's that prepared to meet that soon. But I'll let him talk if he's around. I don't know if his mic is on. So.
Yep, this is Meredith. I have folks muted as the default, but I have just unmuted Saeed.
I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Like Anna said, we really need to get together before I can give you a final.
Yeah,
Okay,
he just kind of
okay.
got back, so.
Okay, and if Ed can provide any help, let him know.
Yeah, and I'm down the street, so if I can make the meeting, let me know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me know when it is. I can drive out. So.
Any other questions? Okay, so Meredith, can we move to, I guess it's 2 slides down.
Yep.
To the first slide of critical thinking.
Yes.
Okay, so again, we're asking your opinion, yes or no, if the wording, given our assumptions between the original model and the assessment, which assessment is supposed to be a 6th grade level, is the reading between the two of them comparable. So we're going to leave this on the screen for a little bit so you can read what's there, and then Meredith is going to put up a poll for you to submit your answer.
All right. I'm going to launch the poll momentarily. I do want to make sure folks have enough time to read. All right. I am going to launch the poll now. All right. We have 33% of votes in. 83. We're getting much closer. Few extra moments for folks to put their responses in. Okay. Last couple seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So we have 80% yes, 20% no.
Okay. At the end, I think we can, well, yeah, because the timing of our call, let's, at the end, if there are some additional comments, let's do that. Let's move to, go ahead.
Do you have target numbers for those polls? You said 80-20, but I don't know. Is that your target? Is that above target, below target?
Going for the majority.
Okay.
2/3 is certainly marvelous.
Okay.
Going for the majority.
All right.
Okay, let's go to the next one, which is adaptability.
Okay. So again, folks should read what's on the screen, and then I will launch a poll. I will launch in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we have most votes in. All right. Now we have all votes in, and we have 80% yes, 20% no.
Okay. Then let's move to self-awareness. Again, the question is the wording between the two versions comparable given our goal of reading level and restriction of 3 examples?
Right, I'm going to launch the poll in 5 seconds. This time without a countdown. So we've launched the poll regarding self-awareness. Responses are coming in. Okay. So it appears that we have all responses in. This time we have 40% yes, 60% no.
Okay. Let's move to the reflective learning screen.
Okay. All right. I'm going to launch the poll in 5 seconds. Okay, poll is launched. Waiting on a few more votes. Okay. Responses are in, and we have 80% yes, 20% no.
Okay. And we have one more, which is collaboration. Again, the question is if the wording is comparable.
Right, I'm going to launch the poll again in 5 seconds. That was quick. Appears that we have all of our responses in, and we have 40% yes and 60% no.
Okay. So we have two in particular where there appears to be the bulk of concern on comparability. The first is regarding self-awareness. So I'd like to see if we could put that screen back up, the self-awareness screen. It's about maybe 3 up. One more.
There we go.
And then be able to have the microphones open so we could hear from those who had some concern about the comparability to the nature of what that might be, so we could have some of their feedback.
Okay, great. I'm going to unmute the lines. One moment, please. So Christine, your line is unmuted. Saeed, you have self-muted. And Robin, I don't see that you're connected any longer. So I resent your audio pin. So all lines are open at this time.
Okay, so of those of you who have microphone capability, if you had some concern or any feedback about the comparability of the self-awareness versions, we'd like to hear from you what your feedback would be.
I'm not seeing, this is Ed, I'm not seeing the comparability between barriers and events. That was the one that tripped me up.
In the second bullet of both of them.
Yeah, because I imagine that's what that was a translation of. That's, I don't think that, I mean, again, thinking about grade level or understanding, a mental event is, that's not really gonna, I don't think that doesn't clarify anything. You know, a barrier, you know, a block, you know, I think, you know, again, if we're talking about someone who's 12 or 13, you know, they would understand that they're blocked by something. I don't think they would consider that a mental event. You know, it's like a Buddhist term. You know, mental and physical events. I think it's a little bit beyond. I think a barrier as a, because it's the thing that Cindy sort of poked at and said that, you know, American idiom. But I think the idea of a barrier actually might be clearer than an event, to be honest.
Okay.
Maybe the word obstacle.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I think having the physicality of a block or an obstacle or a barrier is gonna resonate more. Now it is idiomatic. You know, I don't think. Again, this is my lack of knowledge of, you know, Romance languages like French or Spanish. You know, the most common, probably the most two common languages that other people might be their first language in our students. I'm not sure if there's an equivalent right off the top of my head.
I like obstacles.
Okay. Any other things that stand out to you as something that's affecting the comparability between those two versions.
Yeah, this is Anna. I just feel that the assessment version of the person takes time to think through his or her own thoughts and feelings just isn't strong enough to really emphasize introspection and self-assessment and really doing something critically with that information. I just don't feel like it's really the same. If you just think through your own thoughts and feelings but don't really do anything, I don't know. Mm-hmm. It misses that really.
That you can separate your thoughts. You can recognize when you're emotional. Again, like thinking about the 12 or 13-year-old kids, grader or whatever, that, you know, you recognize when you're making self-awareness to step back. That stepping back thing is what we need to try to capture, is that ability to reason beyond your emotions and your feelings. So yeah, I agree.
Maybe you could put that in to make, you know, rational decisions or something. I don't know. But maybe that's not the right language either, rational decisions, but something like that.
But I think recognizing as a verb is good. I mean, the taking the time is good. You know, a person takes time because it speaks to sort of time out, that you're pausing in some way. But I think but again, I think the key idea is recognizing that, you know, recognizing your emotions and not necessarily choosing what your emotions are telling you to do. Again,
yeah, maybe recognizing. Yeah, maybe recognizing the impact of your thoughts and feelings. I don't know if that helps. But.
No, recognizing your feelings.
I'm taking copious notes, so that's my silence.
Hey, whose pet the dog is?
Oh, that's a Boston dog.
That's probably what my dogs are doing right now, since I'm on the call with you and should be at home.
You can tell by the accent.
Oh, you borrowed for the Boston accent.
Yeah. Anything else on the self-awareness that stood out as being important to highlight here as a source for difficulty in the comparability?
I'd like to support, and I don't remember who said it, on the second bullet, look south for obstacles, I think might be more meaningful.
Okay. Thank you. Can we move on then to collaboration, which was the other one that had some disparity here?
Yep, I'm going to move the slideshow along.
So we are collaborating to present it on the screen. Okay, so with collaboration, the feedback that you may have regarding the issues on comparability here.
I gave that a thumbs down, and it was primarily because I thought the technology bullet should be over there in some type of wording, especially in today's realm of social media, because it's very important, and these kids do use that.
Okay, the technology bullet that's under the model version,
right?
You felt should be represented under the assessment version as something that they would. It's something they regularly use to collaborate.
Yes. And we endorse that. We encourage them to do that.
Okay. Others?
I don't know if the first bullet on the assessment side was meant to translate the first bullet on the model side, but people, which is important, and I think maybe that's where the technology thing can go, but I don't feel like, I think it's that in the same less about communicating to one person or several people in the group and more about working within a group. So the facilitating verb, I think, is the one that needs to be translated more so than simply straight up communication. It's working with, it's the with, the preposition with that I think we need to emphasize. You know, that it's in both the first two bullets, you have the person as an individual is, you know, coming to an agreement with others. One person is sharing information with others. We want that person to recede into the background that they are doing something, you know, that you allow the group, you know, so a word like allow, a word like listen, you know, the kinds of things that they would have been, that people have been sort of receiving in sort of high school situations for a while. That it's, you know, collaboration. I mean, we have other things that speak to the individual, but I think this one needs to be about sort of listening and allowing, and again, that facilitating, rather than the person being the subject doing the thing. You know, and if they are, they're doing something more, not passive, but receding into the group rather than being the person doing the activity.
So it's kind of too much centered on the deliverer of the message rather than participation with the others.
Right, exactly. Participation is an even better verb, yeah. That there has to be some sort of signal of participation rather than an individual acting upon the group.
Okay.
And I just have a question regarding the assessment version, the third bulletin, when it said the person works with others to build a relationship. Is it possible to clarify what kind of relationships?
You have certain things that stand out to you that you're concerned with, or you think should be there?
I'm just saying that I understand what collaboration is, but when it defines it here that the person works with others to build relationship, at 13 years old, you built this with a 13 years old language, you may have a question, what kind of relationship would the collaborations lead me to?
I think you're right. I think you need the word maybe working or interactive.
I'm sorry, interactive. Someone said something else.
A working relationship or an interactive relationship.
Okay.
They get teamwork. I don't see why we would have to translate communication and teamwork into the word relationship. I think they get what communication and teamwork are. You know, like, you know, that, you know, words like agree. I mean, agreement actually is over there, so never mind. But like, yeah, I think a word like teamwork, they're going to get the word teamwork.
Teamwork is good, yeah. Teamwork.
Yeah, because there's, you know, there's a goal. Again, the word goal is really good too. I'd like to import from the model side the word goal over to assessment, because that's, I think, very important. That you recognize the goal of the group.
Okay. Anything else on collaboration? Okay, so I'd like to move to the next steps part so that you're aware of kind of how we're getting there.
Can I go back to bullet 2 for 1 second?
Bullet 2 of collaboration?
Yeah.
Okay.
Collaboration.
Yeah.
Should that specifically address when there are conflicts? And you can agree with somebody that they have a great idea without it being a conflict.
Well, I'll only say this just as a point of explanation as to what that came from. Was the examples were generated as illustrations in the model, not to be exhaustive, but to suggest what this might look like in action, And so I think maybe what was translated over there was just from the instance of the illustration that was present in the model, not necessarily to represent in this case, collaboration in a larger context. So there's certainly collaboration when there's conflict. I think you're pointing out, though, is that advantageous to leave that there since it's only one of 3 examples. Am I interpreting your concern correctly? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to address whether that should remain. Okay. All right. So now let's move to the next steps, if we could. Given the feedback that we have here, we've got a little bit more to address regarding a couple of things in self-awareness as well as in collaboration to get those to be more comparable. And we appreciate your feedback on those things. We're going to have to get to the point where these things at some point are going to be finalized, we hope sooner than later. And what will occur then is also probably in tandem, is the finalization of this instructor feedback assessment, which is still under development, but it's about done. And that'd be the things that the instructor also will be able to communicate back to us about the pilot and the assessment. And then we have to compile these things together into IRB submissions. As I mentioned earlier on the call, in the webcast, there will be a unique submission to each IRB entity at the institutions. We've already received quite a bit of information from the IRBs, and some of them have required wording that they are telling us has to be used in the disclosure, which is rather cumbersome and jargony. And so in those cases, we will comply. However, we're going to affirmatively suggest that they at least try to review our suggested wording on the first page of the assessment, which is more user-friendly, more 6th grade level, will be a little easier for people to understand, and to see whether or not that will meet their requirements. But IRB has the ability to tell us what has to be. So that's our take, and each IRB will have its own package, including the information from each of the pilots that are at their own institution. So those are the next steps, and let me see if anyone has any further questions before we wrap up and say goodbye. Any questions or comments?
What do you see as the timeline for the finalizing?
Well, we were kind of targeting that next week we would be finished with the pre and post-course assessments so that we can make the submissions to IRB. So that's the current operating time frame.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, well, from my perspective, I want to say thank you for your willingness to participate in the call and for your feedback. And I think it's useful. Necessary step this is, as we're messing with wording to try and make it more understandable. We can sometimes make sacrifices that undercut what our intent is. So I appreciate your feedback. So from my perspective, thank you, and I'll turn it back to Meredith.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric. And thanks to you all for providing such good feedback on today's webinar. We're really, really excited about the courses you are teaching this semester, and excited that you are so engaged to be on this webinar or listening to it a little bit later. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. We certainly are available for questions if you have any along the way. So Ed Pines is on the line. Paul Casey is on the line. I'm Meredith Hatch, and we're working very closely with Eric Princess to help with the development of this competency model and now the development of the assessment. So thanks again, and we look forward to taking these next steps with you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Night.
Bye.
Bye now.
All right. Good night.